All right, guys, welcome back to Of Stone and Clay. This is episode 129. Today we have a guest I'm really excited about. Been talking to him for a little bit. His name is Seth Stern. He is the Cowboy Photographer. I saw your stuff, and I was combing through it, and there's something I really love about your page, and it's that it's just very you. It's not. I couldn't compare it to anybody else, right? You have your portraits and your art, your photography that you post about, but a lot of it is just you and your personality and your aesthetic and your fashion and your music interests and your beliefs in God. And I just love how you sort of infuse that into all of your posts, and it becomes just a page where you go and you learn stuff and you see stuff and you consume art, but it's also like you get to see what kind of colognes you like, and you get to see what kind of records you like, and you get to see, where this sort of Western aesthetic came from, and it's just really cool. So I appreciate you coming out.
Man, I'm honored. Taylor, thanks for having me. And I'm just grateful that you get it. Mm-hmm. It's not all just about my photography. I want to create a space or a platform that people can kind of come and spend time with me. Mm-hmm. Everyone's got a seat at the table. They can come and learn about things that they weren't raised up in the cowboy world or the Western world. Yeah. I wasn't.
Yeah.
I'm so grateful that the message is coming across in the way that I intended, which is, I'm this artist. I make art. I take pictures of cowboys. But also I have so many things that kind of feed into that passion.
Yeah.
That we can all sort of relate with.
Yeah. Yeah. I love when people sort of follow their passions down rabbit holes. You know? This
is it.
It's really fun, and it's the cool thing is when you start to gain an audience, and whether it's for your art or your personality or whatever, then you can kind of start to show them other parts of you because they're already interested.
I mean, that's always been the mission.
Mm-hmm.
So when I first started, obviously I had no followers, and so I went out every single day and I tried to make a new friend. Mm-hmm. And at the end of our interaction, I would be like, "Hey, you're great. Can I follow you on Instagram?"
Yeah, just one at a time.
One at a time. I figured at the end of a year, I'd have 300 new followers, and I would have grown that platform because I knew it was necessary for me to do what I saw was meant for me. Mm-hmm. And so along the way, I built that core group of supporters that, they checked out what I did and they became fans of, who I am and what I'm about, and they liked the art. Like It was first about my principles, my virtues as a person, the way that I tried to navigate this life and take the high road and be a good person in spite of all the sort of obstacles and difficulties I encountered along the way. So it started. It was always the vibe was always. It was a little bit about my life, a little bit about what I'm interested in, and then a little bit about the art that I actually create and sell.
Yeah. It's really cool because I'm sure there's others, but I can't think of any photographers that you get such a peek into the person behind the camera. It's usually they're just posting about the finished product,
the creation.
Yeah, and that's cool too, and it has its own place.
Yeah,
but it's really interesting. Like, it's what I love about today's, platforms is you can go and learn so much about an artist, and that makes you want to consume their art even more. Like a lot of times I'll listen to a podcast with a musician or something that I was kind of, I liked a couple of their songs, but then I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to go listen to their deep cuts now.
Yeah.
Because I know what they've been through, and I know what some of these songs mean now.
Yeah.
That's
such a beautiful experience. I feel like I get that when I go and see an artist live. Mm-hmm. Like in between songs, they share a little bit about the story of why that song was made, why it was written, maybe what was happening in that time of their life when they wrote that and what it means to them. And, I was never a big live music guy because I couldn't afford it. And I've been fortunate to be able to be invited to go to more live music. And, you have an experience with the art when you go and see it in person. And it made such an impact on me when I went to Red West SLC last summer. It's like the big first music festival I had ever attended. And they were so kind. They gave me, a pass and everything. So I'm meeting the artists and I'm getting this opportunity to connect with the artist, experience their art in person, and then go home and I'm listening to their music. I'm like, wow, I feel so much more connected to this music and this art that they've created. It's just such a more impactful experience.
Yeah, totally. Take me back a little bit to some of your roots when you first started getting into the camera life and the digital life, and when you were in LA and more in the film industry or the videography scene.
It's kind of a funny story. People always ask me what my first camera was, and it was a laptop with a webcam.
Okay, good.
I think it was 2008 or 2011. Can't quite remember the exact year, but it was an Apple, MacBook laptop. And I would take it and I would like prop it up on the fridge and like tilt the camera down.
Yeah.
And I would make short films with me as the only character.
Right.
In iMovie.
Okay.
And so I made those sort of silly, like I put like a sepia tone filter on it and put like old timey ragtime music over it and do like a silent film, like, I think his name is Buster Keaton used to do him.
Okay.
So yeah, first camera was actually a computer. Second camera was a little digital DSLR Coolpix, something Nikon Coolpix 9000, and it had a really intense zoom, and it had a macro feature so you could focus on really, really close-up objects, so like insects, flowers. You could get really close to things and they would still be in focus.
Yeah, your mustache.
Yeah, my mustache. I didn't have one when I was a child, unfortunately.
That's too bad.
Despite the common rumor, I was not born with a mustache.
Yeah, were you born with that cowboy hat?
I was not. This is a new one from Mr. Parker Smith, Bowman Hat Creative out of Orange County.
And listen, if you're just listening to this podcast and you're not watching, this is for sure our first guest in a cowboy hat.
Good,
which is great.
Yeah,
the first one's the hardest to get. So, but you have an interesting aesthetic because you said you're the cowboy photographer, but you're not necessarily a cowboy yourself.
No, I'm not a cowboy.
But you
take pictures of cowboys.
Right, but you sort of dress the part, but it's a little bit it's got some flair to it. It's got some spice to it.
You would never see a person dressed like me on a ranch.
Right.
You would never see a real cowboy dressed like me.
It's like half your outfit is real cowboy.
So, in the 1950s, these country artists wore these very flashy suits called nudie suits, named after a tailor whose name was Nudie. And they had all sorts of embroidered cactuses and really flared designs. And I really connected with that style because these artists often grew up in poverty or experienced extreme hardship. And wearing this sort of flair was their way of connecting to their audience and the shared American dream of escaping poverty and living, their best life. And so I could dress down, but for me, it's sending a message that, I chased something that I was going after, and I'm not at the end of my journey, but I'm definitely further along than when I started.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, so tell me about when you when you first started, you know, kind of what your journey was in LA, what you were doing out there.
I was born in LA.
Okay.
Yeah, I was born in LA. When I was a kid, we moved to Hawaii where my dad had a job. We moved back to LA. I was basically raised in the film industry.
Mm-hmm.
I started sort of doing day work in my early 20s, working in grip and lighting.
Mm-hmm.
So long days, hard labor, carrying heavy stuff. 12-hour days were standard. 15-hour days could be expected.
Mm-hmm.
And while I was doing that to pay the bills, I was chasing this dream of being a video director.
Mm-hmm.
And I ended up directing music videos, working with a lot of big record labels. My style was always this sort of vintage short film storytelling style to creating music videos. And we had, me and my team, we had considerable success, but I wasn't satisfied. I wasn't fulfilled. Didn't feel like it was filling my cup the way that I would have hoped as a working artist.
Mm-hmm.
Flash forward to 2020, pandemic, everything sort of stops. I take a break. I come back. I try to make it work again, and I was reaching the same pain points that I had, 3 years prior.
Yeah.
Which was, I don't feel connected to this work.
Mm-hmm.
I don't feel in control of the overall vision.
Yeah.
There's a lot of cooks in the kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
There's other troubles where, like, when it comes to making music videos, you don't own the copyright. And so I couldn't actually promote the work. I'd put it on social media and it gets taken down.
Right.
So it makes it much, much harder. You spend all this time making this film, and when you go to market it and share your work, it gets taken down.
Yeah, because it's not even yours.
Yeah.
Right.
So it was all work for hire.
Mm-hmm. And all this time, were you dabbling in photography for fun?
I knew how to use a camera.
Yeah.
I didn't really take photos though.
Okay.
Yeah. Like, I made videos.
Right.
And I was searching for freedom.
Mm-hmm.
I was searching for less restrictions on my creativity, a lower barrier to entry.
Mm-hmm.
When you make a film, you guys are producing this podcast, it takes a lot of effort, it takes a lot of equipment, it takes a lot of time.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of resources. To be a photographer, I need me, I need my camera.
Yeah.
I can point my camera at anything in the world and I can take a picture.
Mm-hmm.
So it put all the power back into my hands as the artist, where I didn't need help. I could get help, and I could have support of a crew and other creatives, and that would elevate the project when it was necessary. And when it wasn't necessary, I could kind of do my own thing.
Yeah.
I could release it when I wanted, and that was always the sort of dream that I had. You're a working artist, but like, somebody else is telling you when this project is going to come out.
Yeah.
So that was, I've always had a little bit of a trouble with authority.
Sure. Yeah.
Like, what do you mean it's going to be 8 months? It's like, I need this to come out now. So I wanted the power back in my hands, and being a photographer gave me that, and being a content creator gave me that.
Mm-hmm.
I can create a photo and I can release it at any time.
Yeah.
I could take a picture today and release it today, and no one can really tell me otherwise.
Yeah. That's really cool. So at what point, I was reading a bit of your blog, and you were talking about how you kind of got to a point where you just couldn't really hang in LA anymore.
Yeah, there was a lot of things that contributed to that. But I just found myself sitting in traffic in my car after a long day of work, just extremely lonely,
Mm-hmm.
and kind of reaching out and trying to be brave and have courage to get through a hard time. You know, I wasn't really earning enough money to support myself. If I did work, a lot of the times there was a big delays on payment. It's just kind of how the industry works out there. Net 30 turned into net 45, and next thing you know, it's a month and a half, 2 months before you actually get paid for the work that you did.
Yeah.
I just couldn't do it anymore. And I realized I didn't have to.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was also the writer's strike. So everyone I knew was unemployed.
Yeah.
You know, you have the most talented people
Right.
that you've ever met in your life.
Yeah.
Going, I don't have anything for the next 3 months.
Mm.
It's like I might have to move back to Michigan. I might have to leave this life that I built here.
Yeah.
And when there's so much dread like that, I just couldn't stand it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
On top of that, my living situation was completely unmanageable.
Mm.
My apartment was under construction.
Okay.
7 days a week, which is illegal. But
right.
yeah, 7 days a week, and I worked from home.
Uh-huh.
So, you know, basically every waking hour of the day, I'm in a construction zone.
Gosh.
So I couldn't afford to move anywhere else, and so I started going camping. You know, I started like getting an Airbnb out in the desert just to escape it, and I'm putting it on a credit card, like things I couldn't afford that were outside of my means. Spending all day in the library just because it was free.
Yeah.
Just it was unmanageable.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got in my car. I confused. There's two stories. I left LA twice.
Okay.
I'm telling you the one that's most recent, when I moved to Utah.
Okay.
So I got in my car and I moved here. I got a lease on a house with 2 roommates, and 24 hours before I was supposed to move, it fell through.
Yeah.
And so all my stuff is packed. I've been desperately waiting for this opportunity to leave and start over and get a fresh start. You know, it was the 2 years of the hardest years of my life.
Mm-hmm.
And it fell through. 8 p.m., you know, the night before I am leaving.
Yeah.
And so I pause and I immediately get into action.
Mm-hmm.
So I accept this is the reality. I'm not going to live at that place. It's not going to work out, and I need to find a new place now.
Yeah.
And so I get on Facebook and I message every single listing that was in my budget within a 5-mile, 10-mile radius in Salt Lake County, and find a place. They respond. We do a video tour. Never seen the place. Never met the roommates.
Right.
Signed the lease, and in 24 hours, drive out there and move in.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
And did you have, we talked about this a little bit before we started recording, but, you told me you had come to Utah as it's sort of a central place for you to do what you want to do, and to go to Idaho and go to Wyoming and Montana and everything. Did you sort of have this vision before you came out here, or were you just like, I'm going to Utah because maybe it's cheaper, or maybe, I don't know.
So the third time in my life that I was homeless, I came to Utah. I passed through. Yeah. And I slept in a friend's guest room. Mm-hmm. And I had experienced this place that I had never been to before. Mm-hmm. And so I had an impression about what Utah would be like. And I was considering a few places in the U.S.
What was your impression?
Just magic.
Yeah.
I don't want to encourage more people to move here.
Okay. Listen, but if you're listening to this, it can get pretty cold in the winter.
It is cold. The air is not good.
Yeah, it's dry.
It's dry. There's pollution. We have the inversion.
Yeah, it's bad.
Yeah, people don't know how to drive.
Okay, but tell me more about the magic.
The magic of, so I stayed in Cottonwood Heights, and just stepping out of that home and looking up at the mountains, and there was just this beautiful thunderstorm while I was walking through Dimple Dell Park, and Cottonwood Heights. And I was just like, wow. And I'm on this, this is in the beginning stage of a really potent spiritual journey.
Mm-hmm.
I'm homeless. I'm living in my car. I'm driving around the country photographing cowboys. And I just had a really rough start to get here. And then I got to Utah, and it was just a moment of pause where I kind of just felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. There was a horse in a pasture in Dimpledale Park. I'm not sure exactly where, but like I reached over the fence and like the horse smelled my hand, and it was probably only the second horse I've ever met in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And there's these beautiful thunderclouds kind of forming above me.
Yeah.
I'm like, wow, this is just. It felt very much like my higher power was present with me in that moment.
It's just enchanting.
It was enchanting. It left a strong impression on me.
That's awesome. So talk to me a little bit more about this is an emotion I'm really curious about with people. This general existential sense of loneliness, because loneliness can be really attached to simply being alone and not being surrounded by people, and you're living out of your car, and you don't have friends or family nearby, but sometimes you're also surrounded by roommates and friends and loved ones, and you still feel that deep sort of crippling loneliness.
I think it's one of the most important things to talk about is loneliness, because we have a loneliness epidemic on our planet.
Yeah.
It didn't matter how many people were around me if I didn't feel like I was supported by them.
Yeah.
And that they understood the difficulty that I was facing. I couldn't live where I was. I couldn't make ends meet. And I didn't know what was going to happen in the future. I didn't know if I would be safe and taken care of, and if I would have my needs met. And so, I would go to work, and people would be happy, and they'd be talking about all the money they're making and all the exciting things they have going on in their life. And I would leave, and I would sit in my car and drive home and go, okay, if they pay me by this day, I will have this much. I just need to, like, you're counting the groceries in your cabinet.
Yeah.
Like, that's lonely.
Right.
When you're living in a big city and people are having these sort of prosperous lives and you're not, like, that's lonely.
And you feel like you can't really relate to anybody.
I remember sitting down with my friend on their couch, and she was telling me about her raise. She's like, I've never been making this much in my entire life.
Yeah.
And
your skin's crawling.
I'm like, okay, I'm like counting nickels, trying to figure out if I can buy groceries and gas to get to work and feed myself.
Yeah.
And I wasn't a victim. I never wanted to, take the victim mentality. But it was really hard.
Yeah, you're just in dire straits over there.
I just didn't know what to do. I didn't have the know-how or the resources or the connections to live the life that other people were living. And so...
Did you have family support?
I was living with my mother.
Okay.
Yeah, but the apartment was under construction.
Right.
And so it was an unlivable situation. The hammering was so bad we have picture frames falling off the walls.
Gosh. This is a great marketing piece for LA.
It's the place that raised me. Some of the stereotypes are true, but I think that I wouldn't have traded where I grew up for anything else that made me who I am. I had a lot of great mentors that showed me the right way. Right is subjective. They showed me a virtuous way to live.
Yeah.
And there's no perfect place to grow up. I do think it changed dramatically to a place where it no longer feels like home to me.
Yeah, in the last 5-10 years, it's kind of gotten in the way of the earth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think around 2019 was like best time for me there. And then since then, it's just been trying to make it work and it not working. And so I realized I didn't have to live there.
Yeah.
Like when you're it is a bubble, and when you're in a bubble, you feel like you have to stay in there. But like free will.
Right.
I have free will, and I realize, no, forget you guys. See, I didn't curse.
Right. That's beautiful.
Yeah, I'm doing my best. I said, forget this.
Yeah.
I'm going to change my life. And I'm going to do anything that I have to within reason, within the law.
Yeah.
I'm going to do anything I have to change my life for the better.
Yeah.
Change my lifestyle, change my attitude, change my circumstances. And, for better or worse, it started off with me living in my car and driving around the country homeless, photographing cowboys, and sort of starting this spiritual journey of, where's my place in this world?
Yeah.
Because where I'm at right now is just, it's not working. I'm uninspired. I don't feel supported. I can't. My needs are not being met.
Yeah.
You're not my wants.
Right.
I always have wants.
Yeah.
My needs were not being met, and so I decided I was going to leave.
Yeah. Okay. So, talk to me a little bit more about this. This first phase of sort of following your dream when you are essentially homeless. You're living out of your car and you're driving around the country, and you're just kind of a vagabond.
Yeah.
And even if you have friends or family supporting you, they're not around you. You're just deeply by yourself. Talk to me about the mental state you were in.
I was actually really excited to be free.
Yeah.
Because I felt very much like under the boot of the city. And I didn't feel like I was so chained anymore. Like, I have a solution. I'm going to chase this dream. People were looking at me like I was crazy.
Well, it sounds crazy. It sounds crazy. You're this guy from LA that's like, I'm going to drive around and take pictures of cowboys.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm not a cowboy.
I'm not a cowboy. I had a passion for country music. I was raised on country music, Johnny Cash, Chris Christopherson.
Yeah. So you already had an interest in just sort of this Western mystique and this.
Yeah. And so I had a passion for that music, and I was on a movie as the set stills photographer, photographing the production of the movie, creating the sort of key art for that movie, and there was a cowboy in the movie. It's a really interesting concept about a Bible salesman that sells his soul to the Bible. So,
that's a good deal.
That's a good deal, right? It's about a Bible salesman that sells his soul to the devil to sell more Bibles.
Okay. But not as good of a deal.
Not a great deal.
Yeah.
So the cowboy in that movie was the devil, symbolically. And it was a very sort of, not the devil, obviously, but the overall aesthetic. We went on to Bakersfield, California, and we made this movie, and it was the last job on my calendar for the foreseeable future. We're in the midst of the writer's strike and nobody's working, and people were coming to the end, and people were like, okay, like, I'm white knuckling it, I'm holding on, like, I don't know what's gonna happen next. And I didn't want to be in that environment anymore of the sort of show blues where you kind of just worry.
Yeah.
And I wasn't feeling inspired, and so I felt really inspired photographing this cowboy and being around this horse that I felt this pull, this sort of invisible thread pulling me towards this dream.
Yeah.
And to me, that was God.
Yeah.
And I told my friends, I wasn't comfortable using the God word at that time, but I told my friends that life was calling me to photograph cowboys.
Yeah.
and to explore the rodeo life and to just get out of my comfort zone and go meet people that were very different than me, a city boy, and try to be their friend.
Yeah.
And try to create an opportunity for me to take their picture.
Why do you think you were called to do this? What about you do you think gives you sort of a unique perspective and a unique edge that maybe other photographers wouldn't have?
I think that's a great question. I ask myself that all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it comes back to me not being raised this way.
Mm-hmm.
I come to the Western world with a genuine sort of curiosity,
an intrigue,
and an innocence of what's this and why are we doing it that way,
Yeah.
and like no judgment, no like just pure curiosity.
Mm-hmm.
Why are things done this way?
Mm-hmm.
And with no interest of no ulterior motives to change things. Just
you don't care who wins the rodeo.
I don't. What's most interesting for me at the rodeo is actually the families that are there.
Yeah.
The rodeo is almost like church,
Mm-hmm.
where people of these small communities come together and celebrate these traditional sports events.
Yeah.
Which are all rooted in the traditional sort of chores and tasks that you would do on a ranch as a cowboy.
Right.
So,
which is crazy in and of itself.
Yeah. This is where they would come together and show their skills. Like, I'm the best cowboy. I can rope this calf faster than anybody else.
Yeah.
I can get on this rough stock and I can sit on him for 8 seconds, while he's bucking and trying to throw me off.
Yeah.
Like, it's who's the best cowboy.
Mm-hmm.
So I think my unique perspective is really just like a genuine curiosity, a really strong sense of empathy. Like, this is so important to these folks that I just immediately feel connected to that, and the sort of emotional pull of like, this is more than just a day, an event. Like, this is them connected to their heritage, their family, the origins of the United States.
Yeah.
It's deeper.
Yeah. That's so cool. I love that you felt inspired and just sprinted after it.
Yeah, foolishly.
Yeah.
But,
but
foolish courage, some might say.
I think to follow a dream, you need some foolishness.
You need something.
You need something. You need some delusion.
Or a doctor.
Yeah. Because especially when your dream is so unique, right? And there's not,
Nobody's hiring cowboy photographers.
Yeah, and there's not a training course. Go be a cowboy.
There's not a career path.
Yeah, and you don't have colleagues really. You might run into other people that take similar photographs.
Yeah,
but you don't have people that are really doing what you're doing.
No, there is a few people. I'll shout out Chris Dickinson in northern Utah. I DM'd him under the recommendation of somebody, and he gave me some great advice when I started. He said, when you get to the rodeo, you see somebody with a camera, reach your hand out and introduce yourself. Just say, hi, I'm so-and-so. Nice to meet you. And that small piece of advice, and Chris not gatekeeping that information and that sort of showing me that I was welcome. Yeah. Even virtually on Instagram. That's one of the best pieces of advice I've ever been given. Yeah. And so, yeah.
So
shout him out there.
Did you in the early days ever, like, this sounds kind of weirdly fun to me, but did you ever just say like, okay, I got maybe one little tiny contact in this small town. There's a little rodeo or something. I'm just going to go and I'm going to try to meet people and take photos and hope that I can like sell them or hope that I can get somebody interested and I get their information. Did you make some wild leaps like that?
I mean, it was never about selling anything. It was always about capturing the moment and creating art. And maybe that's because I'm a foolish business person and I'm not very good at going into a project with the intent of turning a profit. Yeah.
But that's why it's good art.
Yeah. So there's one in particular. This gentleman invited me out to a bull riding practice in Norco, California, and it was a 6-hour drive round trip.
Mm-hmm.
And when I got there was a hope that I would get some photos.
Yeah.
With any creative pursuit, especially a passion project, my hope is always to get one photo.
Yeah.
Anything extra is a bonus.
Yeah.
I want the one to go on my website, to be a page in my book, to be the photo that people go, wow. And that was always, I wanted myself to go, wow.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was the standard, is get the one photo, get the shot. And so I brought out an assistant. We drove, the round trip was 6 hours. And we get to, so the first 3 hours, obviously, we get there to the bull riding practice and the lights don't work.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's dark.
Okay, yeah.
And so I have my assistant, graciously hold up a strobe, my flash, on the sidelines as these bull riders are practicing. I don't know if you've ever been to a bull riding practice before, but they get on bulls.
I've missed them.
Yeah.
I haven't been able to go.
They get on bulls.
Uh-huh.
They get bucked off.
Yeah.
It happens really quick. And so, and it's not at a rodeo arena. This is in someone's backyard. So my assistant is standing in a pile of sort of scrap metal, like rebar, like all sorts of stuff that's just been kind of chucked over the fence.
Yeah.
And he's holding up the light stand and he's like, is this good? I'm like, I think so. We have 8 seconds to try and then reposition the light to get the shot. I am propped up on the this plywood fence, and my leg is jammed in between the plywood fence and a cattle fence. And the only thing keeping me, and I'm leaned over the fence into the arena, and the only thing that is keeping me upright is my leg just wedged in between the fence, my left leg. And, I could have broken my leg if I fell, if the bull came over. Like, it was definitely a very uncomfortable and risky shot. It's dark out, can't see anything. Underneath me is, again, scraps of metal and rebar.
Yeah.
If I fall inside the arena, I might get stepped on. If I fall backwards, I might get, scraped,
right,
cut by the metal. From that whole night, I got one photo.
Mm-hmm.
But that photo, it's on my site. I've sold prints of that.
Yeah.
It was the journey to capture that photo that made it so much more special to me.
Right.
But yeah, I'd say that's probably one of the craziest trips I've gone on to get a single photo.
Yeah. But I think sometimes what people don't understand is, even if that photo hadn't turned out as amazing as you had hoped,
right,
that trip gave you probably momentum for the next shoot.
I was happy with what I got.
Yeah.
I would do it again.
Yeah.
And you have to have that level of conviction to be the artist that I want to be. Mm-hmm. Of whatever this takes. Because it only takes one picture to change your life.
Right.
People don't look at 100 photos. They don't look at 1,000 photos. It's the one that makes them go, whoa, this is something different.
Yeah.
I haven't seen this before. What else has he got? You
know what photos really changed me when I was a little kid? I was in Costco, and I was just like looking at the books, and there's a lot of like big glossy photograph books there, and I was looking through this. I was probably like 11 or 12 or something, and I was looking through this big book, and it was a bunch of Holocaust photos, right? And they're all black and white, and there's barbed wire, and there's these emaciated bodies, and there's these chimneys with smoke, and all these really eerie things, but it really imprinted on me.
Mm-hmm.
And it got me, like, I ended up being a history major, and I studied the Holocaust, and I, like, wrote a book about the Holocaust.
Whoa.
Like, but that was, that was the impetus for getting me interested in that subject.
Yeah.
But I don't know that it would have happened if I wasn't so affected by those photos.
Yeah.
And it's crazy. Yeah, it's just crazy what one little image can do to your brain.
Yeah. I kind of share that experience of those impactful Holocaust photos. My great-grandmother, she was a nurse in World War II. And so we would go through, her memory box, and there would be pictures of Holocaust survivors that she treated.
She, for the Red Cross?
The Army.
Okay.
Yeah. She was in the Army.
Okay.
So I remember them as clear as day, and didn't, being a child, I didn't understand, why is this man so skinny?
Yeah.
But looking back, I eventually understood, like, the sort of impact that she had in the life that she lived. And, rest in peace. Unimaginable to see, like, it's unimaginable whoa.
You're good.
It's unimaginable the journey that she went on from treating, Holocaust survivors.
Yeah. What was this, besides this magnetic pole that maybe at first you didn't recognize as God, what was this, how did this spiritual journey end for you?
I'm still figuring that one out. There was a moment, I would say it's like the emotional summit of that initial journey, where I had arrived in Montana. I'm pretty burnt out, and I haven't really got what I came here for. And I'm at the rodeo in West Yellowstone. I gave him my little $25 entry fee for sitting in the stands, and I'm up against the cattle fence asking the pickup man, like, is it okay if I take pictures? And they're like, I don't care. And so I'm standing there, I'm leaning on the fence, and it's the calf roping event. Sorry, it's the team roping event. And the gate opens, and the calf runs out, and the team ropers are in chase. And I'm snapping photos, and right as he ropes the calf, I get the shot. And in that shot, he's roping, the header is roping the calf, and the pickup man is crossing my frame in the opposite direction. So I capture both of them, the pickup man in the foreground close to the camera, and the moment that the calf is being roped by the header. An impossible shot to recreate. Everything aligned just perfectly. As soon as I saw it pop up on the back of my screen, I honestly felt like I was going to cry. Like, it was this long journey, sleeping in the back of the car and getting lit up by mosquitoes out in the woods, and, getting screamed off of properties that I wasn't welcome at, and just uncertainty, and all these things culminated into this sort of emotional crescendo of this moment of getting that shot. Yeah. And I knew right away that it would be something special. I didn't anticipate that it would change my life in the way that it did, where, I posted it on social media. I still had some doubt that it would, because it's blurry. Yeah. I've seen the photos. Yeah. And I'll send it to you so you can put it on the screen, but it's blurry. I was like, is this good? I'm going to post it. I bury it. It's like the fourth photo in a carousel on Instagram, and put like a beautiful cowgirl, the first photo, things I think people would like. Yeah. And it just blew up. Every single comment was like, wow, slide 4. Like, everyone was focused on this one image. Yeah. And, I still had a very small following at the time, but people behind the scenes were starting to call me have you seen the Cowboy Photographer's work? And
yeah.
so I picked up this sort of, this name that I didn't know the impact that it would have and the waves that it would create in my life. But yeah, things were never the same. It sort of started that snowball effect to lead me to where I am today.
Yeah, that's so cool, man. I love that. I love anybody that is just obsessed with what they're doing. It's so cool.
If people were worried about me, and I talk about that to one of my best friends, Jake. He's like, yeah, it kind of seems like when we first met, he's like, I can tell you're obsessed about this. And he said, that's what it takes to be successful at something.
Mm-hmm.
I think that has been true for me. I'm in a stage now where I'm able to sort of find other things to fill my time and don't always think about work and creating photos, which just feeds into this sort of inspiration. Mm-hmm. You mentioned fragrances, vinyls. I'm getting really into dancing right now, and like I'm able to spend time with family and travel and fill my life with more inspiration than just like I must create for survival.
Yeah. Well, it's so perfect because now you can curate your page to be just your life.
Yeah.
And you can pepper it with your art and your work, but you can also be like, hey, these are the things I enjoy doing and the things I'm passionate about. And because you've cultivated this following, people want to follow it. People want to go along for the journey. And it's really exciting.
I mean, it all feeds into the art.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the sort of delusion is that I have to work 24/7 and produce as much as possible to be successful.
Yeah.
But the reality is if I took 2 hours out of my day and go and lay on the floor and listen to vinyl, the art I create as a result of that is probably of a different quality.
Yeah.
You know?
Totally, man. So I don't know if you knew this, but I write books.
Yeah.
And I had this really vague idea for a novel I wanted to write, right? And I kind of start my fiction with just characters and the place they live at and stuff. And so, but it was just really vague and it wasn't really getting anywhere. And I was in Texas visiting my sister, and we had some downtime one day, and me and my dad are just kind of like, dude, let's go do something. Like, everyone else is off doing something else. Let's go do something. And I was like, Dad, this is going to sound lame, but I need to get to Oklahoma because I'm trying to hit all 50 states, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, Oklahoma's, it's only like 2 hours away. I'm going to never have any other reason to go. So let's drive to Oklahoma. And he's like, all right. So we literally just drive to the border town, and it's this, this really small sort of rundown town. And we just like stop in a diner and we go to this like old abandoned factory and we take some pictures, and we go to the like welcome to this town sign and take some pictures. And it sort of gave me this vision of how I wanted my novel to start, and it was just cool because it's like, I don't know if I would have had that vision had I not gone on this random little jaunt with my dad.
That's beautiful.
Yeah,
I love that.
But yeah, I think when your art is always on your mind, you can kind of just live your life.
Sure.
And try and be inspired by everything you do, whether it's laying on the carpet listening to your vinyl, or out shopping for some fragrance or a new belt, or you're getting a new tattoo, or whatever you're interested in, that can inspire your art.
Sure. It's funny you mentioned Oklahoma.
Mm-hmm.
It's been my dream to visit Oklahoma for years.
Yeah.
Oklahoma is...
it's your white whale.
Yeah, it's my white whale. Yeah. I was just talking to my buddy Tenny, and he goes, wow, I started I started a passion project that takes place in Oklahoma.
Mm-hmm.
And so I bought a plane ticket to fly out there and photograph this passion project.
Yeah.
The oldest black rodeo in the U.S. is the Bully Rodeo in Oklahoma, about an hour south of Tulsa.
What does that mean, black rodeo?
It's a historically black rodeo, so
Like African American?
African American,
Okay.
yeah.
Cool.
So it's been my dream to go to Oklahoma because there is a very rich black cowboy culture in Oklahoma,
Cool.
as well as an indigenous Native American culture in Oklahoma. So I told my buddy, I said, hey, dude, I'm really excited. I just bought a plane ticket. He goes, where are you going? I go, Tulsa. And he goes, wow, if I'm going on a work trip or vacation, like I'm probably picking like Cancun, Hawaii. Like this is your Disneyland. You're going to Tulsa.
Right.
I go, absolutely. Like couldn't be more excited.
Yeah.
So that's it. That's my Oklahoma story for you.
Yeah. So how was it?
I haven't gone yet.
Okay.
It's on the Bully Rodeo is May 24th.
Oh, so it's coming up.
Yeah.
So you're excited.
I can't stop thinking about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I fly in the 22nd. I'm going to be working with some cowboys out there, taking their photo, telling their story. A gentleman named Ronnie Davis, who was actually featured in the Louis Vuitton Western wear fashion show. He's a cowboy in Oklahoma. Another gentleman who goes by the Classy Hippie Cow Puncher on Instagram. Just really interesting characters, really interesting human beings that are down to earth and creative, but deeply, deeply tied to the cowboy way of life.
Yeah, that's really cool. I had no idea that existed.
Yeah.
That's really cool. So are you interested in a little bit of photojournalism?
I mean, I like the story aspect.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you
don't necessarily need to like write it, but you're interested in it.
Oh, I love to write it.
Yeah.
I think that is one of the unique things about my work is that it's the photo from my perspective on the person.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I see you and I see, you know, if you look in the mirror, you may see your biggest insecurities, but I look at you and I see just the things I love about you. You're a warm person, you're friendly, you know, you're intelligent, you're creative. And so when I take your picture, it's from that perspective of admiration. And so I think people gravitate towards my work because I maybe show the world in a more idealistic way of I see the best qualities in people and I want to put that best light forward to the audience and show this person, they may be a little rough around the edges, you know, but they are really passionate about their family.
Yeah.
They're really passionate about animals. They have struggled and they have overcome these obstacles. And that's kind of where the inspiration and the connection to my art comes from, is like, what makes you human?
Mm-hmm.
And how can I capture that in an authentic way and tell your story from my perspective, which is through the eyes of just admiration.
Yeah. Have you spent any time on reservations?
No.
Do you want to?
I'd love to. Haven't been invited.
Right. I asked that because I think my favorite photo of yours is of that Native American cowboy.
Yeah, Masai Elias. He is indigenous Mexican.
Okay.
Masai was smuggled across the border in a duffel bag when he was 8 years old.
Wow. It's a big duffel bag.
Yeah. So you know, his story is out there. He's an incredible person. He has had his struggles with alcoholism, and he was put in jail where he was faced with some pretty big charges, some trumped up charges, and DUI, which he was guilty of. And you know, his life was under threat, and he had this moment where he's laying in his cot, in jail, in a federal holding facility, where he says, I have to turn my whole life around. And so from that moment of clarity, he got sober. He started to live a more honest way of life. And it culminated in him eventually being cast in the movie Horizon with Kevin Costner. Kevin Costner's team helped Massey secure his citizenship, which was under threat because of the mistakes he made in his legal battle. And so he's got such a powerful story. He's somebody that has really given everything to turn his life around and to be a man of honor and dignity. And so it was really divine, timing that we run into each other coincidentally in the desert of all places.
Yeah.
And we get that photo. We had been friends on Instagram.
Okay, cool.
And we captured that photo of him, and I got to hear his story in person. It's been a really big honor for me to be able to just work with Massey and call him a friend.
That's so cool. We love Instagram. That brought us together.
Yeah.
I don't even remember if I started following you or if you started following me. I don't even know.
I had been seeing your content come up, and I had resonated with the sort of clips that I was getting of, you sharing about your personal life and emotional, spiritual journey that you have been on. And I just would always comment, and then eventually there's the outdoor therapist who also would always pop up on my Instagram.
Yeah,
I saw your guys' podcast together, and then I think that's where our worlds connected.
Yeah, that's so cool. Do you have any wild aspirations? Would you love to go photograph the gauchos in southern Brazil, the Argentine cowboys? Do you have some international aspirations, or are you kind of fixated on the American West?
I think the American West is a big appeal because it's here.
Sure.
And I've had my sort of struggles with feeling connected to American culture, and becoming the cowboy photographer has really healed a lot of that disillusionment in my heart.
Yeah.
Because I love our people.
Yeah.
I love the American people. I love our culture. I love our way of life. There may be things that I don't agree with, but I love the people that I get to work with and I get to meet every day. Big aspirations would, definitely travel. Australia is a huge cowboy culture.
Yeah.
South America, and also the origins of the cowboy as we know it originated in Mexico. So going to Mexico and getting in touch with the vaqueros that started cowboying.
Right.
I think that would be just remarkable.
Yeah.
I don't know if everyone is familiar with the vaqueros, but the horse is not indigenous to North America. It was imported by the Spanish, and then the indigenous Mexican and the Spanish settlers developed a way of raising livestock, and that was the first cowboy, the vaquero or the vaquero. The legend goes that they couldn't walk because they did everything on their horse.
Yeah.
And so you have this, mythical being that is always on horseback.
Yeah.
And so that influence went north, and that gave rise to the Texas cowpuncher and the California buckaroo. And that's where we kind of split, but those are the two family trees of the American cowboy.
Very cool.
And so the Texas cowpuncher, they have the more taco-shaped hat. This is kind of a Texas-inspired hat. And then the buckaroos wear flat brim hats. And the difference in those two cultures, those two approaches to ranching to cowboying is the California buckaroo in the western mountain states. They were more about the art of cowboying.
Mm-hmm.
It was more about style, and things maybe took a little longer, but they had that approach. And then the Texas cowpuncher, they were going to get that calf roped faster than anybody else.
A little more gritty.
A little bit more grit, a little bit more any means necessary, get the job done, because we got to keep moving.
Yeah, yeah.
And so those are the sort of the American cowboy as we know it.
Okay, wow. I really wish my grandpa was still alive. My grandpa was a cowboy.
Beauty.
For lack of any other term, and he just I don't even really know what that means, but he owned horses and he rode horses and he did livestock events, and he owned some land. He didn't necessarily have a farm as his only occupation, but he grew alfalfa, and he always owned 3 or 4 horses, and that was his lifestyle. He always had a big belt buckle, and he had his old grungy, nasty cowboy hats that he'd wear during the day, and then he had his nice, like, pristine pearl white cowboy hats he'd wear when he went out to eat or something.
Right.
And it's funny. I've gone through phases, like when I was a little kid, it was all like enchanting to me, and I wanted to be a cowboy, and so I got cowboy boots and I got a little belt buckle and stuff. And then as I got older, I was like, this stuff is lame, I'm not into it, and
it wasn't cool
anymore. And
when did you decide it wasn't cool?
Pretty early. Probably. And part of it was like I didn't grow up in that place. It was like I would go visit my grandparents in the summer in this small town in Utah.
Do you remember what age you were
that I started?
This isn't cool anymore.
Yeah. Probably like 8 or 9.
Okay. Yeah.
But it's funny. I also, like, even though I was down to be a cowboy for a good 2 years of my tiny life.
Sure.
I also was terrified of horses.
Yeah, scary.
And was not interested in riding them.
Yeah.
And my grandpa was not interested in my fear.
Sissy.
Yeah. He's like, what is your problem?
Horses are scary.
Yeah.
Horses can kill you.
Yeah.
They can definitely hurt you really bad.
Yeah. But yeah, then, I think just living in cities growing up, I was like, who are these rednecks?
Yeah.
I just, it became something that I was just not interested in.
Yeah.
And now that's still not my aesthetic. That's not my interest, but
we can fix you.
I'm unfixable.
No, I'm
but
kidding.
It's but I respect it more.
Sure.
And I see the beauty in somebody just being all in on something,
Yeah.
And I love some of the vintage elements of it,
Sure.
My grandma gave me one of his old bolo ties when he passed away that I love.
Love that.
And
my condolences.
Yeah, thank you. It's been a while, but I wish he could have listened to this episode. It would have been cool.
Maybe he is.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I'm always curious when change happens for some people and how old they were, because it kind of helps me put myself on the map where I was when I was 8 or 10, and deciding that the things that I was interested in weren't cool anymore.
Right.
But yeah, for a long time, I mean, country music wasn't cool, and when you're growing up in the city, people would say that they love every type of music except country.
Yeah.
And I like had a sort of country music revival in my life where I was like, I don't care what people think. This is incredible.
Yeah.
And this is culture, and this is art, and this is storytelling. And go back and listen to like old Johnny Cash and like the storytelling that is present in those lyrics. They're not appropriate for a wide audience.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
It's stories of murder and addiction and infidelity and loss and just all sorts of very human experiences. it's not all just the stuff that it's not all just radio country, which I like too.
Mm-hmm.
But I had that sort of like, actually, no, I do like this.
Yeah.
And I don't care what people think,
Right,
you know?
Yeah, I think sometimes when you grow up in the city, the country life, so to speak, it's just sort of the antithesis of what you're...
Yeah, sophistication and class and all these sort of things.
Or even the opposite. Like, I grew up, a lot of my adolescent years, I was in Phoenix, in some, like, you know, some rough adjacent neighborhoods. And so most of my friends were listening to hip hop. And
I love hip hop. I'm a big rap fan.
Yeah, we're wearing, you know, really 90s baggy clothes and chains and stuff.
Yeah.
And so to me, like, the cowboy culture was the opposite of that.
Sure.
And so that was not cool.
Yeah.
You know?
The paradigm where I grew up was that rednecks were unintelligent, uneducated, had no class. And the reality that I experienced when I got connected with people working on ranches is that you have to be extremely intelligent to manage livestock.
Right. Yeah.
It is one of the most, livestock and agriculture, one of the most complex and difficult jobs in the world.
Yeah.
So many things can go wrong with a horse.
Right.
Horses can't burp.
Oh, gosh.
Horses can't burp.
No one told me that.
Yeah.
So you can't give them a lot of soda.
You can't. If horses get too much gas in their stomach, they get a thing called colic and they die.
Wow.
It's one of them. It's a very common. It's every horse owner's biggest fear is colic.
Really? So you can't just be feeding a horse some root beer?
No root beer.
Dang.
Yeah.
That's no way to live.
And so, and obviously, a horse can't speak to you. It can't tell you. So you have to. There are so many ways that a horse is communicating that it has colic, and you have to know those.
Yeah.
And like them laying down, they could have colic.
Right.
They could be ready. They could be laying down to die.
Right.
And so, and so many things can cause colic. It's basically like a really terrible stomach ache.
Yeah.
But they can't release that gas, and so they die.
Dang, that's wild.
And so to be a cowboy, to be a horse person, horseman, horsewoman, you have to be borderline just brilliant to know what's going on.
Yeah. Well, you have to be an expert.
Yeah.
You know? And that's a good reminder that people are so intelligent in such different ways.
Yeah.
And sometimes we think that whatever way that we consider ourselves to be intelligent is kind of the
right way.
The right way. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think all different, spheres of culture people will share that same perspective of the way that I think is right. And I think one of my strengths as a photographer is being able to navigate both those, the city life, the country life, and see that no one is right.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone's acting in their best interest, and everyone is of value, and most people are, I'd say everyone's doing the best they can.
Yeah.
Things that one culture is going to say is common sense, another culture is going to say that's not.
Yeah.
And the coin is the same on both sides.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's when I navigate situations where I'm unfamiliar, I just step into that space with curiosity and non-judgment. And a lot of times I learn some really valuable information, some really valuable principles that maybe a different culture operates on.
Yeah.
Things that are common sense for this person may not be common sense for me.
Yeah.
And instead of approaching that situation with, well, that's not right, go with, maybe I don't know everything.
Yeah. Heaven forbid. Yeah. I was reading a little bit some of your blog posts, and you talked about having this feeling, and I'm not saying this is a feeling you always have, but at the time you said you were struggling with the feeling of not feeling worthy of love.
Oh, yeah.
And I wanted to ask, where that came from, and why has that been a struggle for you?
Well, I went to therapy,
Mm-hmm.
and so I have an informed
Yeah. You actually have some
opinion
answers
about
now?
this now.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of people struggle with worthiness.
Mm-hmm.
I can speak from my own perspective that the way that I was raised, either by my family or in school, I was somewhere along the way I was taught that love was something that you had to work for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was conditional.
It was you had to earn it.
Mm-hmm.
Love had to be earned. And in my adult life, I'm 28 now, and I have just now started the process of unlearning that and undoing this internal narrative that I have to earn love, that I'm not inherently worthy of love, and that love is not something I should have to fight for. It should be something that is freely given.
Yeah.
And so I don't know where that, I can't really pinpoint exactly where that narrative started.
Mm-hmm.
I had a variety of very challenging, periods in my upbringing in childhood, in school, at home. But somehow it's there.
Yeah.
And so, I see it romantically,
Mm-hmm.
chasing unavailable women,
Yeah.
emotionally unavailable people. And the process for me now, as I clarify the love that I deserve and the love that I want, and the life that I want to be a family man. I want a wife, and I want to marry my best friend.
Mm-hmm.
That person's probably going to want to be with me. I'm probably not going to have to convince them.
Yeah.
And so when I find myself falling into those old patterns, God's blessed me with with pause,
Mm-hmm.
where I can go, I don't think I should chase this person. And it's bliss. It's this moment of growth where
Right.
I feel so excited, where I'm like, oh, like that's not my person.
Yeah.
That's okay. And I wish them well.
Right.
But the person that I'm going to be with, they're going to want to be with me.
Yeah. Yeah. Listen. It's like, it sounds so silly because it sounds like, well, dude, that's the lowest bar in the world. But we all struggle with it.
Sure.
And I was talking to my buddy about this, and we always talk about what are sort of the main pillars of the things we want in a relationship, in a woman, right? And we've kind of come up with a handful of things that we think, oh, these are really important. But then we realized there's this sort of ineffable one where the person has to be obsessed with you.
Sure.
Right? And
in a healthy way.
Right. But they just have to love the crap out of you.
Yeah.
Right? And they have to be all in.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter if everything else checks all the boxes.
They got to think you're the bee's knees.
Yeah. Bottom line. And so sometimes we waste so much energy like mourning somebody that didn't like us back.
They didn't love me.
Right?
Good.
Yeah. Thank heavens.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's hard though, because sometimes you're like, man, she was the perfect girl.
In my mind.
Yeah.
Yeah. I imagined her to be.
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't the same person. The person that existed in my brain and the person that I was meeting in real life were not the same two people.
No.
I was projecting my ideals onto this person, which is a lot of pressure and unfair to them.
Sure.
I do it all the time.
Yeah.
And I pause. I go, I'm doing it again.
Mm-hmm.
She's great. This person's wonderful. She's not the person I have in my brain that I'm projecting onto her.
I think the main thing is she, for whatever reason, and there could be a million reasons, she hasn't fully caught the vision of Seth. You know what I mean?
Not for everybody.
Sure. Well, nobody's for everybody. Yeah. But
thank goodness.
But in the same way that when you're in the zone as a photographer and you feel like you're in a flow state and you're truly doing what you told me and you're seeing the best parts of people and you're seeing the beauty in them that maybe they don't even see, like that's what your partner has to see in you.
Yeah.
And it has to be there. She has to get what Seth is all about.
As something that is a reoccurring theme in my life, and you get used to accepting that you're not everyone's cup of tea. Mm-hmm. You're going to meet people that go, you do what?
Yeah.
You don't think to branch out?
Yeah.
And I go, no.
Yeah. No.
The woman that I'm going to end up with, I'm not going to have to explain myself to.
Yeah. I love that.
And I'll patiently wait. I trust God's timing.
Yeah.
And I'm very happy with the circumstances of my life right now. I feel very, very blessed and very grateful to be in the position that I'm in.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not in the business of rushing anything right now. I don't want to sacrifice everything that I have worked so hard to reach. Contentment, fulfillment, appreciation for life, joy. I don't want to sacrifice that to be with the wrong person.
Yeah, just to fill a void.
Yeah, it's okay to be lonely. Like I still, there's times where I'm like, oh, I really wish, like I went and got food before this interview.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, man, I kind of wish I could share this with somebody.
Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes I just do it by myself.
Yeah.
And I just rock by myself, and that's cool.
Yeah.
That's like, and I'm not really alone in that. It gives me an opportunity to go, man, God, thank you. Like, I can't believe I get to have sushi and like go do this awesome podcast with Taylor and just like, this is it.
Yeah.
This is the dream.
Right.
And so I don't see that as I'm all by my lonesome.
Right.
It's like, no, I get to be with God in that moment.
Right. I love that. And the beautiful thing is you can, two emotions can coexist,
Sure.
You can be deeply lonely and deeply grateful.
Yeah.
And really happy and feel really blessed, but also be like, but yeah, this sucks.
Yeah.
And that's fine.
Yeah.
How do you deal with, now this is a question that I'm going to ask that if you asked me, I'd be like, gosh, I don't know. But how do you deal with heartbreak?
I love it.
What does that mean?
I love it. Grief is such a rich human experience.
Mm-hmm.
And I am in the business of living.
Yeah.
There is they say grief is the only experience you'll have in your life that gives you the full spectrum of human emotion.
Wow. Yeah.
And so grief of loss of a relationship that didn't work out, grief of the loss of a friendship, grief can come in so many different ways. Obviously, the loss of a life is associated with immense grief.
Mm-hmm.
But so is like, what did this person mean for me?
Mm-hmm.
This relationship, this, partner that is now gone.
Mm-hmm.
They're living, they're out doing their life just without me. And I think it's such a rich source of inspiration, of self-compassion, of empathy, it's painful. I don't want to put myself in that position over and over again.
Sure, yeah.
But when it comes and it arrives, I go, well, I'm glad I can feel this.
Yeah.
And I don't need to run. And I feel more connected because everyone has experienced loss.
Yeah.
So, maybe my wires are a little crossed, but heartbreak, I love it. It's a huge source of inspiration in my art. And in my life, in my spirituality. I get closer to my higher power.
Yeah. Sometimes it jolts you and kind of reminds you in a good way that, oh, I'm actually part of humanity.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But I like that. It's one of the only ways to feel certain emotions that remind you you're alive and remind you how beautiful life is.
It's just like a roller coaster. You're up and you're down. You're
Yeah.
in denial. You're angry, and then you're sad, and then you accept it, and then you're angry again. It's great.
Yeah.
You know, that's what being a human being is.
Yeah.
And it expands my ability to have compassion for myself and others. I didn't do anything. Like when I experience a loss, I feel shame. Like my first sort of
your default
my
feeling.
default narrative is you made a mistake.
Yeah.
This is what you were a fool.
Yeah.
This is evidence that you are not worthy of love.
Yeah.
And those are the sort of, and it's like, you know, it's like a broken record.
Mm-hmm.
So it gives me that opportunity to go, I don't believe this anymore.
Right.
I'm not going to accept this. I make space for it. This is a voice that's happening inside of me, and I'm going to create this space and hear what it's trying to tell me. Because really, what is that? It's this 4-year-old boy that lives inside of me that is afraid that he won't be taken care of.
Yeah.
He won't have his needs met. That you can't hear him crying.
Mm-hmm.
And I just go, okay. Because you can't push it away.
Right.
Because it's a baby. You know, it's the baby that you were.
Yeah.
You can't tell a baby to be quiet.
Yeah.
You got to go, what are your needs?
Yeah.
What are you crying about? How can I address this pain? And when I create space for that, and I sit with that, it kind of just eventually goes away.
Yeah.
Rather than shoving it down, and then it comes back in a more extreme, morphed, abnormal adaptation.
Yeah. Yeah. I love the way you phrased that. I watched this show last night, and this woman was sort of in palliative care for cancer, and she was kind of having her last days, and she was with her mom and her best friend, and it showed one of the last images in the scene was her just sort of slowly passing away with her friend holding her hand, but then it flashed this image of her 7-year-old self kind of curled up in her arms. And I was like, oh, that's such a cool, beautiful idea, because throughout the whole show it had flashed back to when she was 7 years old and had some trauma, and I just love the idea that we're sort of every version of ourself.
Yeah.
You know, and that, yeah, you're 28 years old, but you're also your 10-year-old self.
Yeah.
And you're your 3-year-old self, and you're your 25-year-old self.
Yeah, the last one's the biggest baby.
Yeah. That's a big baby. That's a really big baby.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. As you have entered this really unique industry, and you're often, meeting strangers, and you're in a culture that is often hyper masculine and really tough.
Yeah.
And really sort of jagged around the edges.
Yeah.
How have you been sort of accepted, or maybe even struggled a little bit with being more of a sensitive cat, being more of someone that wears his emotions on his sleeves and isn't like your default setting isn't to maybe be tough love or to be, really gruff about something?
Well, there's one thing I do love is people that are very direct.
Mm-hmm.
I'd rather you give it to me straight.
Yeah.
And how I react to that is my problem.
Sure.
So I relate a lot with cowboys.
Yeah.
They'll tell you can't wear your pants like that.
Yeah.
Like that's not going to work.
Right.
But in terms of like the emotional side of capturing the stories of these cowboys, it's gonna happen. Like when you work with me, we're gonna get vulnerable, and you may not be used to that, and it may be an intense experience. But I'm gonna create a space where that's okay.
Yeah, yeah.
A non-judgmental. We're not gonna force it. We're just hanging out, and I just happen to have a camera. And a lot of the times we forget the camera's even there.
Yeah. Did you forget these are here?
You know, for a minute.
Has it taken a while?
But now. So, in a culture that is traditionally very macho, because I don't like associating the word masculine with something bad.
Yeah, yeah.
It takes a lot of courage to be vulnerable, which I think is an extremely masculine trait.
Yeah, I agree.
You have to be brave, and you have to have boldness to share how you feel. In a culture that is traditionally very macho, where vulnerability and emotion can be seen as weakness, my experience has been a majority of the people I work with are working against that stereotype.
Right. Like there's bits within them that they want to emote.
Yeah. One of the most inspiring people I've ever met in my life is a gentleman named J.W. Phillips. He goes by Phil. He is a Marine Raider veteran turned cowboy dad. And he noticed all the vets in his network struggling with reintegration into civilian life. And he began to share his story and his challenges with reintegration after exiting, elite military, special forces. And so people like that really inspire me. I've been very blessed to consider, to call Phil a friend and to be able to share his story and amplify his message, which is, if you're out there and you're struggling, you have a place in this world. And what you need is new purpose. If you filled these shoes at one point and those shoes are no longer available to you, you need new purpose. And the purpose that Phil has found in his new life is in ranching, in cowboying, in training colts, raising his family, starting a business. And so I've been very fortunate to just be in the sort of sphere of influence of people like that who are sort of changing the narrative, that it is okay to talk about your struggles and your difficulties and that you're not alone. Yeah, that's really cool.
I've found in my life that most people, I think, want to be vulnerable, right? They just struggle with how to do it if it hasn't been their culture and hasn't been, the way the people around them interact.
Sure.
But people want to share, people want to connect, and sometimes it just takes the right person.
Whenever somebody is very abrasive with me, I'm practicing changing how I react to it. And the flip is, instead of going, "What's wrong with you?" and go, "What happened to you?"
Yeah.
What is behind this hostility, this anger, this sarcasm, this mockery? And behind that is usually a young man or woman who has been hurt. And truly, probably desperately, whether they're aware of it or not, like you said, desperately wants to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
So I try to be patient with when folks are like that.
When they tell you your pants aren't cutting it.
Yeah. I mean, my internet comments are not always very nice. You get used to it.
Yeah.
I mean, if you care about what people think about you, being a content creator is not for you.
Sure. Yeah. I'm sure there's a certain lane of cowboys that are sort of cowboy purists in a way that maybe don't like your vibe because you're kind of this cocktail.
Sure.
You know?
The thing is that on a first appearance, first impression, you go, this guy's pretending to be a cowboy. You go, no, I am not a cowboy.
Yeah, I'm just wearing. I just like these clothes. Yeah.
I mean, and it's usually actually not purists. It's usually people that are just gatekeeping. They don't really.
Yeah.
So when you go to a rodeo, the dress code is Western wear.
Right.
It is required.
Yeah.
To photograph the rodeo, that you wear a long sleeve button down shirt and you wear a Western hat. Period.
Right.
Imagine if I showed up to a rodeo or a ranch and I'm wearing a Nike tracksuit and I got a baseball cap and like it wouldn't command the same level of respect that I don't. I'm more of an alien to the culture.
Yeah.
And so obviously, I mean, as an artist, I'm going to dress a little flashy.
Yeah.
You know, it's a way that I express myself. It's my connection to the past, old music from the 50s, 60s, 70s. Yeah, it's just something that I love.
Yeah.
It's a way as an artist that I continue to express myself. I'm not wearing this to a ranch.
Yeah.
I'm going to put on a button-down pearl snap shirt, you know, something I don't mind getting dirty. And, you know, we'll call them poop kickers. Some raggedy boots, you know, things I don't mind if I step in a pile of manure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's always going to be people that just don't get it.
Sure.
But that's not my target audience.
Right.
That's not the person that I'm trying to appeal to.
Yeah.
I say far and wide people really understand what I'm about, that you know, I present myself in a way like I escaped poverty. You know, there was a time where like I'm walking out of the grocery store and like I had a panic attack because I spent too much on groceries that I couldn't put gas in my car.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm trying everything I can to like chase this dream, the American dream of a better life.
It's not a good look to return ramen.
No.
Yeah.
It's humiliating,
Yeah.
right? So, you know, dressing nice, having dignity in the way that I present myself is so important to my story.
Yeah. It's a badge of honor. It reminds you,
I couldn't
how far you've come.
Yeah. I couldn't always eat out.
Yeah.
You know, I couldn't always wear nice clothes.
Right.
Sometimes I had to be very careful with the sort of pants I would buy because I knew I could really only afford half a pant.
Right, one leg.
So I needed it to last me twice as long.
Yeah.
So I bought workwear, you know?
Yeah, you need a sturdy pant.
Okay, this needs to last 2 years instead of 1.
Yeah.
Because that's how long it's going to take me to earn this back.
Yeah. You're not buying a pair of pants, you're buying your pants.
Yeah. This is like my cartoon uniform.
Right,
You
this
know,
is what I wear
what
now.
you're going to see me in every day.
Right.
And for a long time, it was that. It's like I had a pair of Carhartts and I had a pair of Levi's.
Yeah.
And I had one jacket. And then that was it. And I bought, you know, Dickies shirts. They were cheap, like $25. But it was a button-down shirt.
Yeah.
And I wanted to show up to work looking like I had been somewhere before.
Right. Yeah. That's so funny. That's awesome, man. I really appreciate you coming on, dude. I like to wrap up the show and see if you have any questions for me.
Oh, wow. Beauty. Man. When did you realize you were going to write?
That snuck up on me a little bit. I was always a voracious journal writer since I was a little kid, since like first grade. Like I have some old journals that are completely unreadable, but And it's like
I can relate.
when I'm like 8 years
It's like
old.
hieroglyphics.
Yeah, there's no space between words.
Yeah.
And it's like, what am I writing about? I'm like writing about recess and like jumping on the tramp with Brian and had pizza after school. Like
The most important parts of the day.
yeah, I'm not writing about anything. But it's funny because at that young age, I had no idea about like the importance of art and prose and literary ideas. I was just documenting my life for some reason. I don't know why. And then I didn't really start to think about it seriously until 25 or so. And I think I'd gotten way more into...
You're 26 now?
Ish.
Yeah.
I used to be 26. And I used to... I just got way more into reading seriously.
Yeah.
And that definitely influenced me. And then it's funny. One of the first things that made me think like, oh, this is something I'm kind of good at.
Yeah.
Was when I served my LDS mission in Brazil.
Yeah.
Every week I'm writing these emails home, but I have dozens of people that are like on this email list, and just family and friends trying to keep up with me, right?
You had a newsletter.
Well, for lack of a better term.
I love it.
But so I wrote it sort of for a wide audience.
Sure.
And I kind of had fun with it and was creative, and they were kind of long, and I had a bunch of people say like, dude, I loved your emails, when I got home. And I was like, okay, I was just like telling you about my days. But I don't know, I realized I had, a flair for it, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To me, it seems like people connected with you.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt the same thing when it came to my art. People would come up to me and they had connected with it. And I was just doing what I liked to do, what I thought I was supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
But I had a similar moment where I go, maybe I'm doing something right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, it still took a while to sort of mold out my voice and the way I wanted to portray my writing, what I wanted it to mean. And, when you first start, there's a lot of sort of accidental posturing, You're trying to sound smart, you're trying to sound like wise, and you're trying to sound deep and clever and all these things. And in reality, you want to sort of do that in a more effortless way, which is the challenge. But yeah, I fell in love with having an immediate way to express a feeling that was complex and that was important to me and was deep. And I always loved exploring those ideas with friends and talking about it, but there's something about writing it down where you can kind of go into different corners and alcoves and alleyways, and you can really explore things deeper.
I love that. That's beautiful.
Thanks,
it's beautiful to hear the way that you think about writing and telling a story.
Yeah.
I'm definitely, when I go to write, I'm going to be thinking about those words.
Yeah.
Like, how can I find these alcoves?
Yeah. Yeah, it's just, do you ever have, like, you have a really strong feeling, really briefly, maybe you drive past a park where you had an intimate moment with a girl who is now jettisoned you, right?
Yeah. That's very relevant.
Right? You're like, that happened.
That sounds like Sugar House Park.
Okay. So you get it.
Yeah.
So, but you drive past this park, you have this really strong emotion, but whatever, you're running errands or you're trying to get home, and so you don't necessarily bury it, but you kind of brush it off because you're like, there's a lot to unpack there. You know? I love having a feeling like that and realizing, okay, at some point I can get home, get on my computer, open up a notebook, whatever, and really unpack a really deep thought. That's fun for me.
That's how I feel with photography.
Mm-hmm.
I capture a moment, I see it pop up on my screen in the back of my camera, and a lot of the times I go, well, it's going to be fun later.
Yeah.
but I got to keep going.
Right.
More stuff is happening.
Yeah.
I only have so much time.
Mm-hmm.
I got to get more pictures.
Yeah.
And the joy is actually in the editing process and the culling process, where I reduce the high volume into a few select images, where I get to carve out, this sculpture from the marble.
Yeah.
A big part of my work is actually emphasizing the story that I saw and felt when I was there.
Yeah. Yeah, and you have to be able to be really present while you're doing it, because
Such a joy.
I'm sure in the beginning stages there was maybe more of a temptation to like focus on, oh, was that a good shot, or did I get it, or let me look at my camera, instead of searching for the next shot and being present.
I was actually never that good at taking pictures. I think I was just good at like capturing the moment.
Mm-hmm.
So what I mean is like the picture itself was like blown out or too dark.
Yeah.
And I go, oh, that was a great moment.
Right.
I wish my camera was ready.
Yeah.
in the way that I needed it to be.
Right. But you were good at spotting the moments.
I was good at reacting and capturing it.
Yeah.
Being ready.
Yeah.
And if it was too dark or too bright, I got really good at Photoshop.
Yeah.
And bringing it back into a realm of acceptability in terms of my taste as an artist.
Yeah.
And so, some of my best work is just like recovering a good moment out of a poorly captured photo.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Any other questions?
No, I think that about sums it up for me.
Sweet, man. I think we nailed it. Well, yeah, dude, I really appreciate you coming on. Like I said, you were somebody that just looked so interesting, for lack of a better word. And I loved that you were pursuing multiple things while staying really honest to your work. That was really cool.
It's an honor. I'm just grateful every time I get to hear that the message is coming across.
Yeah.
You're taking shots in the dark.
Yeah.
And it's an honor to just come on here, and that you have invited me to just come and share my story and hear a bit about your story, and just, hopefully inspire just one person out there.
Yeah.
Like if I did that, like my job here is done.
Yeah. Well, I love it because when you're interested in the arts, in creative pursuits, it's all the same. It doesn't matter if you're writing poetry, or you're taking photographs of cowboys, or you're trying to get into theater. Like, it's a very similar pursuit, And even if you're not in the arts, chasing a dream, it's the same pursuit,
Yeah, I agree. I try to tell my story and the story of the people that I photograph in a way that the audience can find themselves in that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's not about me. It's not about the person in the photo. It's told in a way for the audience.
Yeah.
I don't create in a vacuum. It's to be of service to that person on the other side of their phone that's maybe not feeling their best, and they're wondering, what are they going to do next?
Yeah.
If Seth can go from mopping floors to selling art to people all over the world, like maybe I can get a better job, or
maybe you can mop floors.
Maybe you can.
Maybe mopping floors is an upgrade.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the goal. It's just to tell my story in a way that somebody else can find themselves in it.
Yeah.
Say, okay, if I'm here and he was here, maybe I can change my life.
Yeah, 100%. Well, it's very human, my man.
Do my best.
Okay.
I've been practicing being human all my life.
Yeah. I just barely started, so that's great. Okay, man. Appreciate you.
Yes, thank you so much.
No problem.